So in part one, in this skills-based section, I will briefly revise the rubric for human experiences. So for those students that are in Year 11, your first module as you start HSC is the common module, and it's based on the concept of human experience. And that paper one relating to the common module has one section on comprehension worth 20 marks out of 100. And your second section is an essay that is also based on human experiences. So being well versed in concepts relating to human experiences certainly helps you with comprehension because you know the kinds of ideas that you'll be discussing and that you can expect to see in the paper. When I and Johnny sat the HSC, comp was only worth 15 marks, but now it's worth 20. And a lot of that is because comprehension is arguably the only section that really tests your analytical skills. You can have a pre-prepared essay, you might get away with writing an essay that maybe someone else has written for you in the HSC, provided that you adapt it, but nobody can do your comprehension for you. So they do place the emphasis on that section, and that's why it's important to have those skills. So this is probably familiar to most of you, your structure of the HSC exam. So as I mentioned, and to the benefit of those who are a little bit younger in Year 11, in your HSC for the advanced and standard courses, you have two papers, paper one, which is the common module on human experience, and then we've got paper two, which is based on the modules, and there is slight difference in the modules between the advanced and the standard students. However, paper one is the same for both advanced and standard students, and we've got 20 marks of comprehension based on the common module and a 20-mark essay based on a prescribed text that your school has selected. Okay, so I'm focusing obviously on your first 20 marks of your paper, which is comprehension. Now, the skills that you need to harness for this section of the paper are both conceptual being derived from the rubric. You're thinking about what ideas relating to human experience you can see and identify in the text you have studied. And then of course your analytical, your ability to break down both the form and the language features of the text that you have studied. So, when we are considering analytically the form of a text, this is important, and if you don't know what form is, I would write this down. When we're thinking of form, we're thinking of the macro construction of the text. Form is the macro construction of the text. This is where we are considering the characteristics of that type of text. So we're asking ourselves, what makes this text that type of text? If I'm looking at a poem, I'm asking myself, what makes this text a poem? Or indeed, what aspects of its construction are unique to that text type? When we're considering poetry, poetry is an auditory form. We're thinking about its meter, its rhyme, the fact that we have a persona speaking, perhaps the use of enjambment. Is there an iambic pentameter in the poem? These are hallmarks of that particular text type, and thus are aspects of form. So if you have a question that is asking you, how does the form of text A contribute to the way it explores human emotion being a concept of human experience, and you start talking about metaphors or similes or imagery, you won't get a mark because imagery, metaphors aren't unique to a particular type of text. They're a technique that we can see in multiple texts. So that's an important distinguishing factor. Form being macro, technique being the micro elements functioning at more a sentence by sentence level that aren't necessarily text specific. So what's another different type of textual form? So let's say if we're thinking about short stories, right? What's an element of form that relates to short stories? So a good starting point would be to consider the narrative voice, okay? In both novels or short stories, narrative voice is a key element of form. Is it written in first person? What's the effect of that? Characterization, dialogue, and characterization, they particularly work hand in hand. As a starting point, concepts are going to relate to the key ideas in the rubric, your ability to identify human experience concepts, and analytical is your ability to break down text in relation to both their form, their macro features, and their techniques.